Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Chris Kaufman is here. Simon Clancy is here. And as always, we are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code 5, F-I-V-E. You deposit $100, you get $100 back in a match bonus. It's a one-time rollover, which means you can bet it through once and you get it right back. So it's essentially a free bet. And if you're following our Twitter account at 3 Yards Per Carry, I put up some plays out there. The one that I gave you yesterday hit 3 out of 4. So that's pretty good. And the only one that I missed was, let me see which one did I miss? Rory McIlroy versus Brooks Koepka. And Brooks Koepka had 7 birdies today. Rory McIlroy had 4. So you can do the math from there. Brooks Koepka is leading the tournament right now at -7. And as always, we are brought to you by Better Edge. If you go to Better Edge, go to betteredge.com/5 reasons, and you get $25 just for signing up if you sign up with that link. All right. Hello, Simon. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Alfred. Alfred, what? You're not the
Alfred,
butler.
Alfred.
Yeah, I know. Where
What's
did that come
called
from?
an Alfred now?
It's Alfredo.
I mean, I don't know why I called you Alfred. I don't
You know, literally
Okay.
nobody has ever called me Alfredo in my life. Nobody.
Did they ever call you Fredo?
Never.
Alfie?
Alfie?
Yeah, Alfie. Yeah, that's happened.
Really?
Yes.
Never struck me as an Alfie.
Yeah,
No,
Alfie.
never struck me as an Alfie either.
Yeah, Alfie is it's more jocular, like locker room nickname, Alfie. Just like you call Brooks Koepka Brooksy, you know.
What do you get called? What's your
Alf.
Okay?
That's
The
it.
same thing that you guys call me. Yeah, that's what everybody calls me. Yes.
So you don't have some little nickname, some little pet name.
Nope, none.
What does your
Only one
wife call you?
Asshole usually.
That's about right.
What are you Chris?
Am I Chris? Yes, I am
Yeah.
unfortunately just Chris. It's like the most common and
There's no-
boring name ever.
Do you have a middle name?
I do. It's Joseph. It is not Thunderhorse.
Oh, what's yours, Alf?
My middle name is Alberto.
Alfredo Alberto.
Wait, you are
Arteaga.
Alfredo Alberto?
Yes.
That's a
Arteaga.
lot of A's as well.
Yes, 3 A's. Yes.
Wait, you're a triple A.
Yes. Yes. I'm a AAA. Yes.
I don't know exactly what to do with that, but there's something there. I'll figure it out.
Is a AAA a battery?
Yeah, it's a AAA is a battery. It's also a car club, and it's also the minor league system of the Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
And it's also the highest rating you can get on a company's bonds.
Yes, it is a AAA rating. Yeah, absolutely. Although they started faking those in 2007, and that's what causes the problem in 2008.
Oh,
yeah, isn't that why? I was going to say, isn't that why the housing crash happened? Wasn't that the
Pretty much?
didn't they,
Yes.
Yeah. Ratings agencies kind of dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
the whole,
Yeah. They were saying that something was
subprime-
AAA when it was actually double B.
That's right. Yeah, the whole subprime mortgage collapse was down to down to Alf.
Securitized debt.
We'll eventually top ourselves with that one. We'll do better next time.
Excellent.
Or worse.
No.
Or worse. I mean, we'll do worse next time.
Well, yeah, worse. I think that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
You know that in the UK, if you say that you top yourself, that means you commit suicide.
Really?
When you
Really?
said, yeah. So if I went to work and said, "Oh, fucking Alf's topped himself," people would think that you'd committed suicide.
Wow. That's an
Yeah.
awful. Okay.
Ouch.
I gotta write
I
that
will
down.
Make sure not to say that, just in case.
Yeah,
we
not.
have quite a few listeners from the UK.
Yeah, I mean, when you said we'll top ourselves, I was thinking, really? I mean, it's bad, but like, I think everybody needs
I
to
don't,
commit suicide over this.
the draft hasn't even happened yet, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that pick 51 hasn't come yet. Yeah. Speaking of pick 51, we won't talk about pick 51 right here. We'll do that in the second half of the show. We'll talk about the top of the draft, okay? As far as
Good point.
tenants. And Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper, McShay, as late as they're starting to change a little bit, but as late as mid-March, some of them had 4 tight ends in the first round. Are they completely certifiably insane, Simon?
I mean, I would never say Daniel Jeremiah was certifiably insane at all.
Although
I
he's
don't think
changed it. Like I said, he's changed his stance on that. He has
yeah, I don't think
2
there'll
in
be.
the first round now.
Yeah, I think there'll be 2 in the first round as well. I don't think there'll be 4. Yeah, I think there'll be 2. I know how high he is on. He's incredibly high on Dalton Kincaid, who would be my number 1 tight end in the class. So I can understand why he's high on him. But yeah, I think there'll probably be 2, maybe 3, but I think 2 will go in the first round.
Chris?
I think 3. I think 3 is a solid guess. It's just usually tight end 3 wouldn't go till actually pretty close to where we're picking. Average from an average standpoint. But this is a really top heavy tight end class. It's also kind of a deep one, which is makes it really interesting. So 3 wouldn't surprise me at all, because I think Darnell Washington is really gonna have somebody's attention.
All right, now let's start here because I really find these rankings completely interesting. Lance Zierlein has Dalton Kincaid number 1, and the more you watch of him, he's such a natural pass catcher. He's not hopeless when blocking. He's clearly a first round talent. And we're going to talk a little bit about Darnell Washington, and we might talk about him a lot more in the second half of this show. But Lance Zierlein has at tight end number 3 on his list, Luke Musgrave. And if you turn on the next gen stats numbers, and we've talked about how good they are at predicting where these guys end up going in these drafts, they got Luke Musgrave number 1. Where are we on Luke Musgrave? And I'll start with you, Simon, because I look at him and Lance Zierlein says he's the second coming of Dallas Goedert. He feels really good about it. I guess Dallas Goedert is a nice player. I see so much Gesicki. There's so little evidence that he's actually, a really, really good blocker at Oregon State. I don't really get the Luke Musgrave love, but evidently a lot of people do like him. And like I said, these 2 people absolutely have him way up there. Your thoughts on him as a prospect?
I think he's the most athletic tight end in the draft. My issue with him is that he's barely played, really. I think he's 44. We did him on 2-3 YPC. I think he's only caught 44 balls. I mean, he's tall. He's got great play speed. He separates, which makes the significant difference between him and Mike Gesicki. He makes yards after the catch. He can pull away from second-level defenders. He's very sudden. His release is very sudden. He's a real weapon in the seam. He's consistent with his hands. And I think he's a willing blocker. He's certainly a better blocker than Kincaid is. But he's not polished in any way, shape, or form. He's going to take time to come to the boil. And I don't think the Dolphins can afford to pick him because that window, as we've talked about, is kind of open and they can't afford more mulligans. I think he certainly has potential, but I just don't see him as a viable sort of top 40 guy, and I certainly don't see him as a guy that the Dolphins would pick at 51.
Yeah, one red flag that I do see in his game, and it's not something that I've actually seen because I haven't broken down his run game film as much as I have these others, but Lance Zierlein says that he needs to pair his feet with his hands in the run game. That's a massive, massive red flag. That means he essentially doesn't know how to play in line. So I don't know where he goes with that comment. But Chris, where do you go with this prospect? Because all I see is holes, and I understand he's very talented athletically and as a pass catcher, but that just left town here, and that just got $4.5 million in New England to share time with everybody else. What am I missing here with Luke Musgrave?
Well, and it's almost like I'm gonna contradict myself about 3 tight ends going in the first round, just because I think you have to take some cues at some point from what did just happen in free agency. with respect to Mike Gesicki and even Dalton Schultz. And look at their markets and what they ended up getting, and I think that there's sort of like how we're almost reaching a peak in terms of the undervaluing of the running back position. That it really stood out to me what the market was like with those tight ends that honestly aren't that bad, are pretty good. Mike Gesicki in the right scheme could be a really good player. Dalton Schultz at times has been a really good player. And yet, they're not getting any play. They're not getting much play in the markets. And that makes me wonder about, how the NFL are going to value guys that we see in the draft, particularly a Luke Musgrave, who I think is one-dimensional. I think he's very savvy in the pass game. I'm not that freaked out by, lack of production. It is true. I mean, 4-year college career and you got 47 catches. And that's not great. But if we've seen lessons in the past about the tight end position, it becomes more about your future than your past as far as production is going. I mean, you got guys that had really good careers that had basically no college career. If you go back a ways and you start talking about like Jimmy Graham or what was the tight end forever and with the Chargers that was so
Winslow,
good.
And then Antonio Gates.
Well, Antonio Gates. I'm not going that far back. Jesus Christ, dude. But yeah, I think that like if you look at Antonio Gates, the guy who played in Denver for a while, who slips my mind. Adam Gase ended up getting him in Miami.
Great Julius Thomas.
Yeah, Julius Thomas. I mean, we're talking about guys that had virtually no college career at all. And it really becomes about the athleticism, the pure, basketball athleticism of these guys. So that doesn't disturb me, but it does disturb me how one-dimensional Luke Musgrave looks. And in a draft, which is, I feel, unusual in that it's full of guys who are very good blockers, for that position. We've had a stretch where the college tight ends were not blockers at all, right? They just suck, right?
Yeah.
At blocking. And then in this draft, you look at it, it's fat with blockers. So I wonder if Luke Musgrave is going to actually suffer a little bit because of that. Because you're looking, the NFL are looking at all these guys, and it's like, well, in a class fat with blockers, here's a guy that is basically a wide receiver, and those guys aren't getting money on the markets. So I think I don't buy that he's going to go that high. I mean, it only takes one team, we know that, but I don't think that he's going to go all that high.
All right, now a guy who was supposed to go really high because he was the consensus number one tight end around, I would say, December. Ever since then, a lot of other guys have been introduced into the class. And depending on who you believe, this guy's anywhere from tight end number 1 to tight end number 4. And Lance Erline moved him down all the way to tight end number 4 on his list, which I find extremely odd because he has the best comparable of them all. He compares him to Jason Witten, but he has him behind 3 others, which I don't understand. What is happening with Michael Mayer? What's obvious is that he is under 250 pounds. At least that's how much he weighed. I believe at the combine. Is that correct, Simon?
If you say so, mate. I'm not.
Because I got 249 here, but everybody keeps saying that those numbers are wrong, that those weights are wrong from the combine. But
they're wrong. Why would they be wrong? Like, we're talking about the stuff from on the combine, NFL website.
Yes, because some of them have been contradicted already for some whatever reason. I don't believe that they're wrong. Well, then we're gonna take their word for it and say that he's 249 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But that 249 pounder ran a 4.7 flat and jumped 32.5 inches. His broad is 9 feet 10 inches. He has a bad athleticism score from Next Gen Stats, but what is not bad is his actual film. the man can play tight end. He's a consummate tight end. I would pencil him into the New England Patriots immediately, if not sooner. Your thoughts on Michael Mayer? What's happened to him and his status as tight end one, Simon?
I don't think anything's happened to him necessarily. I think I never get the sort of people are shooting up the draft boards. I was reading a GM today talking about how he set his draft board, and he said, the whole media thing about this guy shooting up a draft board, that never ever happens in an NFL with an NFL team. He said by December we all know who these guys are, and the only things that change are the additions of information that you get when you get to East West Shrine, Senior Bowl, Combine, and they never, ever, ever vault a guy who is a day one, around 1 to 4 guy, never goes higher than 1 round based on anything he does in any of those games or any of the workouts. The only guys you ever get that vault more than 1 round are guys that are undrafted free agents who you have listed as undrafted free agents, and they blow the doors off in a workout or turn up at the Senior Bowl and do an amazing job, or the Shrine Bowl and do an amazing job. But I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think the thing that, the media, in inverted commas, and that sort of draft media, Twitter, whatever, has seen is that, he doesn't have elite athleticism, he doesn't block what's the one standout thing? He's got really good hands, he runs really good routes, and he's an excellent blocker. He's a very, very dependable run blocker.
And he wins, and he would win a good body contest. Like, he looks great. Yeah. He looks the part.
But he's physical. He's got great hands. He has value in the run game. Like I said, you can line him up in line on the wing. He can be flexed out in the slot. He's not sudden, but he sets up defenders really well. I love how he uses his frame just to box out guys down the field to win. It's the sort of thing that Rob Gronkowski used to do, is just use that big physical frame to box out defenders to make catches. He's great in contested area. He makes great contested catches. He's not afraid to go over the middle, and he'll pick up yards after the catch. He just lacks that sort of elite athleticism. He's not a Luke Musgrave in terms of an athlete. He's not Sam Laporta in terms of the ability when he gets the ball in his hands to really accelerate. But I think he's a complete tight end, and a guy that will just, he's not my number 1 tight end, he's my number 2, but I think he'll play straight away, he'll start straight away, and I think he'll be really good for a long time straight away.
Chris?
I think he's a really good player. I like him a lot. I think that he's wound a little tight to me, but I think that, and his speed, I don't think there was anything weird about the way he timed or the way he jumped or did anything there. I think that's about what he is. And I think that he's going to play in the NFL for a long time. The worry that I have with him is that, in the NFL, if you're a star tight end, it's not because you're a blocker. And it's not necessarily because you're strong and things like that. It's because you do things in the passing game. So in some ways you're looking at, like, say, a Luke Musgrave who we were just talking about, and you're like, well, I trust that guy to actually make an impact in the passing game. How much better is Michael Mayer truly than a Durham Smythe? When you get into the NFL and train them on, because everybody gets better. Everybody gets better in the NFL. Durham Smythe got better in the NFL. Michael Mayer is going to get better in the NFL. When you reach the finish line, what are these guys going to look like? I do think he's better than that. I'm not trying to say he's Durham Smythe. But in fact, if you want to compare contrast with Musgrave, for example, I trust Michael Mayer after the catch a lot more than I trust Luke Musgrave. I think that Michael Mayer had something like, he forced 12 missed tackles this year. He forced 31 in the last 3 years. Luke Musgrave has forced 2 missed tackles his entire career. At Oregon State. I don't trust Musgrave after the catch. I would trust Michael Mayer because he's a strong tackle breaking type. I think he can do some damage that way. But it's, what's the position value? Again, go back to, the market and how much these guys paid and stuff like that. What's the position value? Are you taking a guy in the first round that basically you could have gotten for like $4 million in free agency? You know what I mean? And that's the real fear, I think. So that's why I'd be afraid of him. But he is a solid player. He'd play, he'd get snaps. I think he's one of the few tight ends in this draft that, for the Dolphins, from their standpoint, would definitely get a fair amount of snaps. Maybe like 600 snaps or something like that, because I think he could take jobs away from Durham Smythe. in addition to being a good run after catch threat in the passing game. But just because he's a solid player, what does that translate to in dollar figures? You know what I mean? Like in terms of overall value. So that would be my concern.
All right, and we're gonna take these two as a pair, and then we're gonna go to break after we get these done. But I think both of these guys have an outside shot of getting in the first round, one more than the other. But Luke Shoemaker is a guy that tested off the charts, but he's one of these guys that when you see him there and you say, okay, he ran a 4.63 at over 250 pounds, great broad jump, looks the part, good blocker on tape. But then you always remember, man, did he even play in the playoffs? And then you remember, yes, he caught that one pass. He's not a guy who stands out, but he sure stood out in this run up to the draft. And then we're going to take him and we're going to pair him with Darnell Washington, another guy who doesn't have many. I'm not going to call it pass receiving chops. I'm just going to say that there's little evidence that he's going to be a great pass receiver besides being giant and fast, which are two qualities that are good to have. I guess these two are mysteries to me. And I would say Darnell Washington has a better chance of being in the first round than Shoemaker, but I wouldn't be surprised if either one actually sneaks into the end of that first round. Your thoughts on this pair, Luke Shoemaker, Darnell Washington, Simon?
There is more chance of me ending up in the first round than Luke Shoemaker. I mean, that just isn't happening on any
Agreed.
level.
I agree with you.
Mark this tape.
No chance of that happening whatsoever. He's not even he's a good blocker. He's not even the best blocker on his own team. Joel Honigford is the best blocker, best tight end blocking at Michigan. A guy who had one catch in the playoff.
Oh, but what a catch!
Would not be considered as some. He is. This is to me a case of somebody who does show up and has some athletic traits and shows up in the combine, but when you put the film on, this is not a guy that he can block. He's a good blocker. He's a very good blocker, to be fair. But this is not a guy that I would take. I wouldn't even take him on day two. And the fact that he's getting day looks not really. I would have a list of play. He to me would be a sort of a value number 2 tight end. I just don't see it personally. I like Washington. I think he has a ton of talent. I think that he is one of those players that I believe has been sent back for a medical recheck on his knees and hips. I know Sean Tucker has as well. I would be concerned about the fact that he carries that weight on that frame. His frame's amazing, but just carrying that weight and doing what he does on those knees, I think I would not be surprised to see Washington fall a little bit, actually. Depending on we just have no idea what the medicals are. That information never really comes out. He is a unique human being at 6'7", 270 odd pounds. And I've seen him up close in real life, and actually that height and weight don't do justice to what an enormous human being he is. I can remember being at Lambeau and seeing the guy that was at my Jimmy Graham walked past me, and it was just like, holy fuck! Imagine him running into you. And he was massive, and Washington is the same. Yeah,
it's the Raekwon Davis effect.
Yeah, if your offense wants an offensive tackle who can run routes, make guys miss after the catch, then Darnell Washington is absolutely your man. And I have spoken to scouts, certainly at the back end of last year, 2 from the NFC, who said that their team had conversations about whether or not, if it didn't work out at tight end, he just adds 20 pounds and he becomes a sensational tackle, because his blocking is that good, or it can be that good. He can be inconsistent, which is that he can be sloppy, I think, at times, and that's a concern. But look, that tight end room, people talk about, he didn't catch loads of passes, and he didn't do this, and he didn't do that, and he wasn't tight end 2 at Georgia, and that, and absolutely he was. But don't forget, he was behind Brock Bowers, right? The best tight end in college football. and then Oscar Delp essentially was taking catches off him as well. And Delp was a 5-star number one tight end, freshman number one tight end in the nation, who Georgia hooked up as well. So, I don't think it was a massive discrimination against Darnell Washington's ability just because the best tight end in college football and the best incoming freshman and tight end in college football were also catching balls as well from that position. So I really like Washington. To me, under no circumstances would I ever think that Luke Shoemaker was making the first round. I think there are things, Chris, I don't know about you. I think that the issue for me with Washington, apart from the potential injury stuff, is a little bit clunky in and out of his breaks. That his separation isn't amazing when he's running, some of those tightly wound routes. Do you know what I mean? Like those in cuts and the short and intermediate routes. He doesn't have that kind of he doesn't kind of have that instant separation where he's a little bit tight in the ankles, a little bit tight in the hips. But when he gets the ball in his hands, he is. I mean, you go back and look at the hurdle against Oregon early in the season. He's, it's a sight to behold. And when he's on as a blocker, he is essentially just a sixth offensive lineman. He's that kind of Lee Smith guy, the guy that will just absolutely waste you as a blocker when he's playing. Daniel Jeremiah calls him a moving billboard, which I think was a very apt description of what he can do.
One thing I can say about Darnell Washington, he could run a glance route, he could run a bow route, which was oddly enough 2 routes that Mike Gesicki could not run last year here, and are 2 routes that Mike McDaniel loves to call for his tight ends. Chris, I guess you're going to take a giant dump on Luke Schoonmaker, which means that he will be a Kansas City Chief and be paired in 12 personnel with Travis Kelce. So I don't think you want to even mention him, but I guess you want to go on Darnell Washington. We could go on all.
You've got some weird obsession with Luke Shoemaker that I don't understand.
This is.
Well,
odd.
you talked about how the media keeps making up these rumors of guys moving up boards and moving down boards. Well, this is a guy that's moving upwards.
I don't think
whatever
he's moving up boards at all.
He is not moving the needle anywhere, mate. And I just
I'm going to say, from the standpoint of the Miami Dolphins, I doubt they'll even consider drafting him, Luke Schoonmaker. He is one of the most pedestrian guys that I've seen in the draft as far as run after catch for a tight end.
Plotter.
Yeah, 100%. He is tightly wound. He is a plotter. Yes, he's got some long speed. He's got the good the good long strider type of speed, and he showed that out. And he's strong. I won't take that away from him. He's definitely a strong player, but he's got no rack skills to speak of. I don't think that he made speak. Oh, he's another guy with 2 missed tackles in his entire college career, by the way. But
54 catches in 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years, 54 catches in 5 years. And pretty much all
10.25 catches per season,
and pretty much all of them came in 2022 and 21. I mean, he's a guy. He's got no run after catch skills to speak of. To me, he's tightly wound. I don't like the way he moves. I watched these guys. The combine was actually nice and revealing, and the scouts know everything already, right? As Simon was talking about. But a lot of us get more exposure to the guys in different situations. When they're running their drills at the combine, and to me, he carried zero appeal to me. In the way that he moves and the way that he stacks. So yes, I am going to take a large dump on him, just like Simon did. But
if he goes in round 1, I'll buy you a speedboat, Alf.
and no, I don't think that he's going to Kansas City and going to be like the next Travis Kelce or anything. Simon and I both loved Travis Kelce, for the record. So I think we had our arms around that one. But no, as for Darnell Washington, I feel like I could go back and forth on him because in the passing game, he's clearly very raw, I think, in the passing game. And it's something that, the role that he had at Georgia was clearly like he embraced the blocking in a way that maybe I've never seen any tight end do. And I'm being honest on that. And But at the same time, that meant that he's raw in the passing game. Now, but go back to what I was saying before about these players that have virtually no college career. Like we're talking about what's his name from Miami, Jimmy Graham and Antonio Gates, and and guys like that. Virtually no college careers, and it's really all about the future and what their athletic potential kind of dictates about their future. So it would have surprised me. Darnell Washington comes to the NFL, refines up, gets better in short area quickness with shorter, choppier steps and things like that, because he's like such the epitome of a long strider. But would it surprise me if that all happened with just his incredible natural gifts and then his outstanding blocking, and then be one of the top tight ends in the NFL? Absolutely not. It would not surprise me whatsoever. Would it surprise me if he gets moved to right tackle? Absolutely not. Because A, he can make a lot of money being a tackle, a left tackle, or a right tackle in the NFL. B, he absolutely has the blocking chops to get there if he trains up a little bit more, puts on a little bit weight and such. And I find it fascinating, Simon, that you've already had scouts talk to you and tell you exactly that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might consider this, because I would too. We're looking for right tackles in Miami, right? And I'm looking at him, I'm like, I think I could plug that guy in right tackle, especially in this scheme.
I have one other nail for the Luke Shoemaker coffin.
Oh no.
He'll also be 25 in week 3 of the season.
I meant to mention that he's almost 25.
Yeah.
So Darnell,
can he play right tackle?
No, I doubt that.
No.
Darnell Washington possibly can. So he's really intriguing to me. I think it's about the future. It's not necessarily about college production, particularly with that position. So yeah, he's a really fascinating player. I like the way he moves. I like how strong he is. I like how great of a blocker he is. Honestly, it's like a unique thing watching him block, to me anyway. It's inconsistent. I agree with you about it's inconsistent, but you'll watch one game and you're just like floored. Absolutely, like I've never seen a tight end block like this. You'll watch another game and there's like, maybe 30% of the snaps are just like, oh, you kind of took that off. Like you kind of took that snap off or that play off. So, but he is fascinating. I wouldn't be surprised to see him fall. I think there is the medical thing, and I think there's also something of a tweener thing about him. It's very boom or bust. The thing that I would say about the bust potential is, at the very least, you're going to move him to the offensive line and see what he's got there. And so that's why I would take him. I would absolutely take him.
Yeah, one thing I like about Darnell Washington, and you could see it, and it's evident in all of his tape, since he's so giant, most outside linebackers, even in the SEC, are going to be a little bit under 235 pounds. And most guys that play in those roles in the SEC are somewhere around 225, 230-ish. And they try to run past him because they think he's not quick enough to pick them up. He finds them. He gets two hands on them. He squares them up and blows them up out of the play. I love how he sets up to block. He
has got the feet to be a phenomenal blocker. It's pretty fun to watch. But the last thing I would point out, though, about him in the passing game, raw, but who else in this draft? He's got one of the highest, if we're talking about run after catch ability, like he is one of the best run after catch tight ends in this draft. And he's averaging over 7 yards after the catch. Darnell Washington is, and he's got some missed tackles, or he's got some broken tackles too. Certainly more than the 2 broken tackles that some of the guys that we've talked about have. So he's really good. I think he's going to go in the first round. I think somebody's going to gamble on that future. But at the same time, based on Simon brought it up, he's might have some medical stuff. So could you see him slip? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I think he's a guy that can slip because like I said, there's always warts with most of these guys that are going to go at the end of the first round, which like all these guys are a candidate to go in at the end of the first round, except Dalton Kincaid. I think he's firmly in the first half of the first round. He might be tight end number
Except
1.
for Shoemaker, because he shouldn't even be drafted, according to Simon and myself.
The Schoenmeister might end up in the top 10 by the time Alf's finished.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it. Lance Zierlein absolutely loves him, and I don't really get it. Although there is good blocking tape on there. Like I said, there's good
what do
blocking
you mean you
tape.
don't really get it? You put the guy in the first round 10 minutes ago.
He's going to Kansas City, folks. Where does Kansas City pick? 30 what?
There's more
Pick
chance
last.
of Dorothy playing tight end in Kansas City than there is a Luke Schoonmaker.
He'll be he had 35 catches last year, and that's almost all the catches he had in his entire career. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it. We're going to talk about the Dolphins in the second half of this show. Hopefully not Luke Shoemaker. Okay, I don't think we're going to bring up Luke Shoemaker here. There seems to be no evidence that the Dolphins are onto him, which means they'll take him 51st.
Thank God.
Thank God, yeah.
All right. First, these words. Do you have a water leak and can't find where it's coming from? Are you dealing with water or mold damage in your home or business? Then call Water Cleanup of Florida at 954-579-0356 for immediate assistance. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, and their team is prepared to handle all types of leak detection issues, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. After the leak has been located and repaired, Water Cleanup of Florida will then clean, dry, and fully restore the damaged areas. Water Cleanup of Florida is fully licensed, insured, and certified to provide the one-stop shopping that busy homeowners and business owners require. There is no need to bring in other contractors. They will handle the entire project from start to finish. Service areas include Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell phone at 954-579-0356. That's 954-579-0356. Or visit their website at wcufl.com. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts.
I'm Jalen Phillips, and you're listening to 3 Yards Per Carry.
And we're back. All right, now we're going to talk about the Dolphins and tight ends in this draft. And I'll start with a question, Simon. You can answer yes, no, or maybe, and then elaborate. The Dolphins will take a tight end on day 2 of the NFL draft. Go.
Maybe.
Huh.
Where to say
You said yes, no, or maybe.
All right, now you got to elaborate why they might just pass on all of this altogether. No,
Because
nobody
I
at 51, nobody on the trade down, nobody at 84.
Because I think that you'll be surprised where the Dolphins go on day 1. I'm not sold that they wouldn't move up and use that 3rd round pick to do so. I'm not sold that they wouldn't spend their 51 pick on a player and a position that I don't think many fans see coming. I would not rule out. You what?
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I would not rule out defensive tackle as the Dolphins have 3 defensive tackles on the roster currently, 2 of which are going to be essentially playing end, and the other one is a free agent at the end of the year. This team needs serious help at defensive tackle. Yeah, and I know there's a load of vets out there, and that's great, but you've got to continue to look ahead for the future. I would not be shocked in any way, shape, or form if they didn't take a DT at 51.
To add to your point, Simon, if you look at the history with Vic Fangio and that position, and how many of them, how sheer quantity of them that end up, cycling through on the field getting snaps, we don't have even close to enough, and additionally, Christian Wilkins is in line for a fat extension. Zach Sealer is in line for a fat extension. Raekwon Davis is going to be up soon too. So basically every single guy is up for, big contract, big raises. And that's all we have at the position. So
yeah, I just look at guys like, I just see guys, Carter obviously out of the range, Brian Brissy out of the range, Elijah Cansey probably out of the range. I mean, to me, Mazzie Smith is a top 15 player in the draft, but there are some off-field issues, the stuff with the guns, that sort of thing. If Mazzie Smith fell into our, even to 41, you look at the kid at Baylor, Siaki Ika, who we did on 2-3 YPC the other day. I know they like Keanu Benton. They've talked about Benton. I think they met with Jacqueline Roy, the kid from LSU. who they like a lot at the combine. You've got the Dexter kid at Florida. To me, there are some interesting defensive tackles who really fill what this defense would look to do. I would not be shocked at all. So that's why I said maybe on a tight end. I don't think it's look this to me, and I've said it before. I don't think they can afford to mulligan again. I said it last week. They can't afford to mulligan again. In terms of the draft, and that's what they did with Tyndall. Barely played. Zakama barely played. And Skylar Thompson played because our two quarterbacks got injured, but the fact that he even made the roster was a shock. The fact that he was playing in the playoffs is a shock, and that was never the plan. But the fact that your 7th round quarterback, who's your 3rd stringer, actually ended up playing more than the guys you took on day 2 and early day 3, that's a bit of a shock. So they can't afford the mulligan, and I think they just need somebody, especially even if it's a defensive tackle who just comes into the rotation early. He'll get a lot of snaps in this defense because that's what Vic likes to do. And if that's a guy like Mazzy Smith, then absolutely sign me up. He was number 1 on Bruce Feldman's freaks list last year. He is an absolute freak. You watch him, one hand, really good centers from the Big Ten. Luke Whippler at Ohio State, just hold them up with one hand, rip them away and make tackles. You see him against Steve Avila, against TCU, absolute beast against beast. To me, he's a tremendous player. I just wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins took a DT.
Chris? You want to answer
this is the tight end
question?
podcast, but
yeah, sure.
No,
this is just me. He asked for an explanation. I'm elucidating on my reasons why I said maybe.
No, I actually do agree with you. As depressing as it would, in some ways be, relative to all of our expectations and all of our desires to keep building some of the aspects of the offense. That would not surprise me at all, just because of, like we said, look at Vic Fangio's history and rolling those big guys in and out of the lineup, keeping them fresh. Look at the contract statuses of these guys that we do have. 100%. I think that's true, but we're talking about tight end here. Would the Dolphins take one on day 2? There's 2 ways that you can go about this when you have the sort of fat class that we have at tight end now. You could say, we're going to go for guys at the top because they might be elite. Say Darnell, Washington does train on. He could be elite. He could be, somebody that you look at and say, gosh, we don't see guys like him very often. But at the same time, you could also just be patient and wait and get somebody, that is far better than you'll normally get with a later pick. And that's, somebody like a Braden Willis reminds me of that. And so I think that there are 2 ways that you can go about it. Simon, what makes me nervous though? Speaking of, we're talking all kinds of trash about Luke Shitmaker just on the last segment.
Luke Shoemaker is somewhere in Michigan, and he's listening to 3 yards per carry by mistake, okay? Because he probably looked up a stat somewhere, and that's what came up. And he's like, "Wait a minute, I'm all over this podcast. Why am I all over this podcast?"
It's nothing personal, Luke.
It's nothing personal, Luke. But this whole shitmaker discussion just brings to mind, one of the very last guys that Simon, you and I just shat all over. And we're like, God, I really hope the Dolphins don't take this guy. You know who that was? Austin Jackson.
Jackson, yeah.
Well, you're missing a third guy because I said he wasn't a first rounder.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, we were just. I mean, I think there was a point where we're like, name somebody in the first round that you absolutely do not want the Dolphins to take, and I think we said Austin Jackson.
Yeah, all of us said Austin Jackson. Yeah.
So
and I remember why, because it was one of the last mocks that came out had the Dolphins taking Austin Jackson exactly with that pick. I think it was a Daniel Jeremiah mock, and I asked you guys for your opinion on that mock, and all of us were like, ugh, like no.
So Luke Shoemaker confirmed at 51. But anyway, I think that the Dolphins, there's a good chance they could take a tight end in day 2. I think there's enough of them. There's enough of them that satisfy their their requirements. This is unique in that there's a lot of tight ends that satisfy their requirements. Their what they like in terms of run after catch and blocking. Those are the two pillars for them. I think at this position is run after catch and blocking. And I think that there's a number of guys that do it. I think that Darnell Washington's probably a pipe dream, but he would clearly be on their radar. I think Sam Laporta and Tucker Kraft, probably Tucker Kraft. I think that they might have Tucker Kraft above Sam Laporta, but those two at 51 would certainly, they could play in the system. They could have bright futures. I think that Sam Laporta, reminds me quite of. I see other people making comparisons to like Kittle and stuff. I'm not seeing that, but I do think that he reminds me a lot of Mark Andrews. And so I think that he's a good player. I think that Tucker Kraft is more a little bit more violent, and I think a very, very quality player. And I know the Dolphins have been talking to all these tight ends. And then I think you go a little bit further down. I think that Brenton Strange, they really like him, and I can see why. I know that maybe not all of us agree on that, but I think that he is a solid player. I think he's good after the catch. I think that he's a solid blocker. I think that all around, I think he's a little bit younger too, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that he's got a nice future. And I think also you look at I'm blown away whenever I watch Braden Willis of Oklahoma. He is a really good blocker. He's also, he runs well. He's very smooth. He plays well. He plays very well and consistently so after the catch. And I think that he's a good option for the Dolphins. I don't know where exactly he's set to go, but I know that he can be used in the backfield. I know that he can be used as like an H-back or an F, or I know that he can be used on the line. He's a very, very strong blocker that did some strong things in the passing game as well. And he runs well. He's got good athleticism. I would take him all day and be very happy about it. No matter, wherever that ends up, as far as his grade and where the rest of the NFL are looking to draft him. I think that Cameron Latu is another strong blocker, good to run after the catch, very physical player. And then I think that there's some guys like Josh Weil that you might look at that again, good run after catch, pretty good blocker. I think that this is the same thing that you're going to hear from me anyway, over and over again about what sort of tight ends they might be into. So yeah, sort of round 3, 84-ish. You're talking about maybe Brenton Strange. I don't know if Cam Latu, Josh Weil, and Braden Willis rate high enough to be taken there. But I certainly do think they fit. But at 51, it's probably going to be all about Tucker Kraft and Sam Laporta, given that Darnell Washington's probably not going to be there.
All right, they've been tied to Tucker Kraft, Brenton Strange, and Sam Laporta one way or the other this offseason, either by most mocks or by actually working these guys out or speaking to them at the combine. Let's take these three, because I think that if I'm breaking down their picks and where these guys might go, we already spoke about Darnell Washington. If he's at 51, he's obviously in consideration, and he should be, in my opinion, he should be on their big board. He should be on their BPA list at 51. He might be the BPA at 51. So we won't talk about him, but we will talk about these three guys as far as 51 and 84, because I think that these three guys fit exactly right there. Tucker Kraft, Brenton Strange, Sam Laporta. Let's try to compare these three and what you're getting with each one. I guess you could go first, Simon, and I'll throw this in. Sam Laporta looks better and better upon every single viewing, and you can't argue with the pedigree. Like, there's not much wrong with him. So your thoughts, Simon, on those three, the big three, I think, for 51 and 84. I think those are the three most likely.
Chris, could you just go back and say Tucker Kraft, Tucker Kraft, Tucker Kraft, a bit like Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan, because that was really funny. And I didn't want to interrupt you at the time, but that was funny.
Where would we draft Chaka Khan?
Yeah, I like Tucker Kraft, but I do worry about the step up from the FCS level to the NFL. That would be a concern about somebody that you're you're really trying to integrate quickly into that offense. Because the FCS clearly wasn't ready for a 254-pound tight end who can catch and move as well as he does, and he did. Great after the catch, tackle breaker. I think he broke 35 tackles on 102 catches, which is more than Mike Gesicki broke in his entire Miami career.
Five times more than what Mike Gesicki broke in his entire career.
I really like Laporta. I like the Iowa, the line of Iowa tight ends, obviously, and you kind of immediately think about George Kittle. What if he's
did you hear that little missive the other day that he was working out with George Kittle? Like,
yeah,
that doesn't get you all lathered up. I don't know what will, right?
I think the wider point is that there aren't that many George Kittles who've come into the NFL over the last 10 years. That's the point. And, it's difficult to replicate, somebody who's as good as he is. What the pluses that you say about Laporta, extremely athletic. He played in a very limited offense at Iowa. He lined up all over the formation, flexed in the slot, on the perimeter, in line. He's an excellent route runner. He is a middling run blocker. I thought he engaged pretty well. He used his hands and his feet working pretty well together. He just falls off blocks too much. So strength at the moment is an issue. Where would he be if he played in the Alabama offense or the Ohio State offense? You know what I mean? This would be a first round guy potentially. A lot of his targets came on quick outs, quick screens. I think he's excellent and very speedy after the catch. He's really bursty after the catch and explosive after the catch. I don't see Brenton Strange as a day two guy. I've got to say, I know that the Dolphins like him. I know that teams like him. I know that you guys like him. I would not have him as a day two guy, and I think I'd be pretty surprised if the Dolphins took him. I'd be as shocked if they took him at 51 as I would be if Luke Spunkmeyer made it into round one and you got your speedboat. Although I do think he'll get after it in the run game. They move him around the formation. He's he's a solid player. To me, I just think he's he had some drop issues that would concern me. And I like him. I just don't love him. But yes, I potentially could see a scenario in which the Dolphins took him in the third round. To me, that would just be a little bit too juicy, because I just think he's fine. He's absolutely fine. He can move guys in the run game. He's got I think he needs to improve his route tree. But for me, Laporta would be the standout of those three. I like Kraft. I think the step up's a bit much. Before Strange, I kind of he's okay.
Before having Chris weigh in here, you said that Iowa's offense was limited. Iowa State last year. Do you remember a college football game that was worse than that one, Simon? Since you watch a lot of college football, because I don't. Final score was 10-7 Iowa State. It was a juggernaut. It was.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, any game with Iowa's offense in is pretty.
That thing last year set football. Forget college football. It set football back 1,000 years. That thing was bad. Okay, that was as bad. By the way, Sam Laporta, 8 receptions, 55 yards in that game. Okay, so.
Oh, what an average there.
Yeah. All right, Chris, take those 3 guys. Who makes it out alive?
I think that I like Sam Laporta a lot. I think that going back to the combine and watching these guys run their drills, there was not a tight end on the field at the combine that looked better running drills than Sam Laporta. Yeah, he is the most. And the thing that you have to say when you're just watching him do all this stuff is he looks utterly professional. Like when he's running his routes, and he's doing the drills, the way he moves in a very smooth way, and he's athletic. So it's smooth and athletic. He can change directions really well. I think that there's nobody. I don't know which tight ends in the draft are more, professional looking out on the route and with the ball in the air. Possibly Dalton Kincaid, because that's what we're talking about. That's why he's so coveted. But and also as a blocker, I saw an NFL scout or personnel guy say something recently about him as a blocker. He will. I mean, you can have him on the line and have him get up on a defensive end. Like, he can do that. I've seen him do it, including some big, powerful ones. You know, some big 270, 280 pounders. You know, he can do that. He can chip anybody. If you're talking about what sorts of guys do you trust in the block, I don't think there's a guy on the field that you don't necessarily trust in the block. He does have work to do. They all have work to do. But you know, I think that he's a strong blocker. He's good after the catch, as Simon has detailed. I think he's very savvy in the pass game. This is why he reminds me of Mark Andrews, actually, is because of how savvy he is and professional he is in the passing game. So I like him a lot. Tucker Kraft, I share the same concern Simon would. You know, FCS to this year, we don't have a big window. You know, so you know, what are you going to get from him this year? If you're just going to get 300 or 400 snaps out of a guy this year at tight end, then I wonder if you've basically failed the pick. You know, the 51 pick. Because the window is not going to be open very long. I mean, hell, Tyreek Hill just said that he's not going to play, you know, beyond 2024, right?
2025.
Well, is he retiring in 2025 or is he playing 2025?
After 2025.
So, okay, so you know,
3 more seasons.
He's not going to be playing very long. You're going to have fat contracts coming up for Jalen Phillips, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer. You know, all these guys, God knows, you know, the clock is ticking on guys.
Robert Hunt's going to want $10 million a year.
Sure,
from
absolutely. Now. Connor Williams is due a contract extension. And you know, the clock is ticking on both Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, you know, and so the window is not going to be open very long. And so if we're getting a guy, this is the danger of picking a tight end at all at 51, right? Is if you're getting a guy who's just going to play like 400 snaps as your kind of halfway number one, halfway number two tight end, then I don't know that you're getting the impact that you really needed from that pick. You know, at least it's not the red shirt that we're talking about with like Channing Tindall and Eric Ezekanma, but I think you need significantly more than that for a team whose window is right now. From that 51 pick, and that's why I keep going back to right tackle. But I think that these are good players, though. All three of them. I like Brenton Strange a lot. I think they're all pretty young. I think they're all like just turned 22. You know, and so I think that it would normally be a good deal. I would feel differently about this if there wasn't such a closing window, if there wasn't such urgency. And really, frankly, some glaring holes on the team. But yeah, I think that day 3. But again, I keep going back to Braden Willis. I mean, you really got to watch the guy. You really got to watch him play for Oklahoma and what he could do. And if somehow Miami could acquire a 4th round, I don't know where he's going to go. Frankly, I'm not Simon. There's no better expert on this draft that you're going to find, out there other than maybe Lance Zierlein or somebody like that than Simon. So you'll know better where he's going to end up going. But I think that is such a strong potential pick for us. If the Dolphins are somehow able to get the right, acquire the right pick to get him. And you probably wouldn't have to pay as much, and yet you probably would get as much impact, given that none of these guys, other than maybe a Darnell Washington, would be 800 snap guys in 2023. So that's the concern.
All right, it's day 3 now, and 51 and 84 have passed, and no tight end has been taken. So now we're into day 3, and we're looking at the guys that are available on day 3. There's a couple of like physical dynamos in there. I will take one right away that everybody's going to keep asking me because I'm the resident Hurricane guy. Will Mallory can't play football. He's not good. Okay.
That's a bold statement right there.
You know what he's good at? If you can get the ball into his hands, first of all, getting it into his hands is part of the chore, right? But if you could get it into his hands, he can run away from people. Like, he's fast. Like, he can run.
He's fast.
He's a good athlete, good size. He's just not. He'll be on a practice squad in the NFL next year. Maybe somebody takes him in the sixth round because they have a really good evaluation on him. Man, there's one that I do see that is a physical dynamo, great size, tested off the charts. And man, I keep looking up his pronunciation, and damn it, if the pronunciation of his name is not Zach Kuntz.
You're getting yourself in trouble right now.
I'm looking at Old Dominion, and it says K. What does this mean? K-UH-NTZ. What is that?
Huh? That's a cunt. That's a cunt if I've ever seen one.
Your thoughts, Simon? Let's start there. Let's start with the physical dynamos, because that's who's going to be taken in the 6th or 7th round at tight end. You're not going to get a finished product that can play 400 snaps. You're going to get a project in the 6th or 7th round, and that's what Miami will have left once they get to day 3. Man, I got that guy at the top of my list, and I don't have much else behind him. Your thoughts, Simon, on Zach Kuntz, and anybody else you may have for day 3?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Zach Kuntz is just a guy. Actually,
Really?
I'm not a fan. I just think he's all height. If he was 6'4", people wouldn't give a shit. Really, he's so raw. I'm just not a huge fan. Yeah, he ran a 4.55. Great broad jump, but I just to me, I just don't see it. He's athletic, and that's kind of it, really. In terms of guys that I like later on in day 3, look, that there's there are some players that I think, I'd be, I mean, the guy that interests me a little bit, although he's obviously fallen off the cliff a little bit, but Jaleel Billingsley, who was at Alabama, now at Texas. I'm a big fan of a guy Chris mentioned, who probably will go on day 2 but might fall into the 4th round, and that's Cam Latu of Alabama, who essentially replaced him. There's a kid at Louisville, Marshawn Ford, quite interesting. And then I think Chris mentioned 2 of the guys. Obviously, you mentioned Brenton Strange, Braden Willis. The other guy's Davis Allen at Clemson. He
Yes,
kind of was.
I was going to mention him. We didn't mention him in day 2. I think he's a shot at day 2, maybe, but he's a day 3 guy.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't put him in the first round, mate.
No, that's Luke Shoemaker. That's
Luke Spunkmeyer's in the first round, but so that would be me. I mean, I think the value is definitely in that. Kincaid, in Mayer, in Washington, Musgrave, I could take or leave. Kraft, Laporta, Latu. To me, that's the class of the group. And then I think there is some absolute hay to be made in guys like Willis, Allen, Strange. Maybe throw in a Luke Ford at Illinois, or look, where is Billingsley in terms of because I think he did pretty well at the Texas Pro Day. So yeah, I'd be interested in those sorts of guys.
Chris, day 3 fodder. What do you have for us?
Well, the problem is that once we pick at 84, I don't think we pick again until 197. So that's a massive hole. And I don't know if the Dolphins have plans to try and fill that. It wouldn't surprise me if they do. And if they do, then that's when you're talking about a Josh Weil of Cincinnati, or maybe Cameron Latu, or maybe Braden Willis that I mentioned. Zach Kuntz, listen, I'm a sucker for the guys that are really athletic dynamos, right? Just off the charts kind of guys like this. But Zach Kuntz, when you watch him play on the field, I've kind of compared him. I've kind of compared him to a cross between Mike Gesicki and Matt Jones, and unfortunately, I think it's more Matt Jones than Mike Gesicki. And I just don't see it working out. Like I don't see athletic balance and just kind of be an athlete type skills. I see a guy that's very awkward looking, who can run in a straight line, jump pretty well, and maybe catch it. And I don't see much else. He looks very awkward to me. I don't see him being a very polished looking athlete that makes plays. So no, I wouldn't go there. The dream would be if, to me, as I've mentioned him so many times, if Braden Willis made it to like 197. and we're able to take him. And it's like, well, I'm pretty sure, unlike some of the guys we took last year that were just all redshirt, I'm pretty sure that he would play, and I'm pretty sure that he would play fairly well right away and get some mileage out of him in 2023. But other than that, we've mentioned it. Josh Weil, Cameron Latu, Braden Willis, guys like that. And we'll see if Miami has plans to fill that big hole in their draft, so that they can get some contributors. But I'm not sure.
Braden Willis does have that profile of a guy that was going to play a lot last year until he got concussed. Ethan Carter, right? Kind of speedy, blocky, a blocker specialist, H-back type, right?
Yeah, I personally just think he's so much more of a compelling looking athlete on the move, and with the ball in the air. And he's consistently good after the catch. He breaks tackles. He can be used. He's like Ethan Carter, and as much as Ethan could be used like an H-back or fullback, kind of wannabe. In fact, I think he was primarily being used in preseason as like a fullback, instead of what's his name, who wasn't able to, I think, play for a lot, or he was still coming off injury, Alec Ingold. So he does remind me of that, but I think he's more of an all-arounder than I would have expected. And so that's why I keep singing his praises. But Davis Allen is a good shout too. He's a little bit to me of a lumberer, as far as the way he moves. But I think if you're talking about day 3, you can do a lot worse.
Yeah, I tend to agree. All right. You guys got damn near an hour and a half of tight end talk, mixed in with about 15 minutes of defensive tackle talk from
about a solid 60 minutes of shitmaker talk.
Luke Spunk Monkey.
Yes. Next week, guess what? Simon could go on for an hour if he wants to, defensive tackles, because we're going to talk offensive line and defensive line next week.
Oh, for fuck's sake, that's going to be like a 2.5 hour show.
Jesus.
Well, we'll start with offensive line on Monday. How's that? Okay. We'll take defensive line later on in the week.
Easter Monday, mate. That's not happening.
Okay. Let's make it Tuesday then. It is Easter Monday. We'll make it Tuesday then. But till then.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.